Yeah, it's not just gold and silver, copper as well. She's been a major importer of copper ores, and that's been the source of most of her silver, indeed, because something that I think 56% of silver comes from copper ore and also zinc ore. So, you put those two things together. Also, if you include gold and lead, I mean, something like 72%, I think is the figure, of silver, mined silver, comes as a byproduct of these metals, not silver mines. Silver mines are just a small part of the whole thing. But she's been accumulating silver for a very, very long time, and it's allowed her to suppress the price until now. And there's a change of policy, and this change of policy came along, I think, with tightening policies on rare earth exports. And I think probably the thing that really did it was when America turned around and said, this is a critical mineral. We've got to accumulate silver for strategic purposes, whatever, feed to secure our defense industry supplies, whatever. Anyway, China wasn't going to do that. She wasn't going to supply it. And that is why, to all intents and purposes, she seems to have virtually stopped exporting silver and is now importing massive quantities. I mean, in the first 4 or 5 months of this year, she imported the same amount of silver as she exported in the previous 6 years. I mean, all in one go and in half a year. I mean, this is quite extraordinary. Big turnaround. And the common factor is, you can look at the individual sort of commodities, whatever, but, the common factor is the payment mechanism, if you like. And she is paying for these in dollars, getting rid of dollars. What she's doing is she's dumping dollars. And this actually is the earliest sign of a crack-up boom in these fiat currencies, in the dollar. We all follow that a lot later. We all eventually realize that it's not prices going up, but our currency going down. I think that China is already signaling this. And if you see what she's doing in terms of preparing the ground to put the yuan onto a gold standard, with the People's Bank of China deciding we're not going to wait for everybody else to realize that the dollar is going to zero. But there's something else coming into this, DK, which I think is desperately important. I'm sure we'll get onto it a bit more. But there is evidence that the Chinese are basically selling all the dollars they've got and also other currencies at an increased rate. Now, we see this with their massive purchases of gold, something like 700 tons so far this year. Their massive purchases of silver. I mean, they have been substantial sellers of silver in previous years, in the order of anything between 3,500 and 5,000 tons. Now, first half of this year, over 2,000 tons imported. We don't know what the exports are. I think virtually nothing. They're hanging on to things like fertilizers in sulfuric acid, all these sort of things which they've been happily exporting in the past. They're not exporting anymore. Now, we can all find reasons for each individual one, but what it all boils down to is China is a massive seller of dollars. Why? Because she thinks the dollar is going to collapse. She knows what's going on in the Gulf. She understands that game completely. I mean, she's in there behind the scenes, let's face it. And not only that, but her moves to protect the yuan are now becoming increasingly obvious. Put those two things together and you can see that you've got the first sign, if you like, of a crack-up boom.
Japan imports 90% of its energy. The carry trade is unwinding. China is dumping dollars and buying gold and silver at record rates. Over 700 tons of gold this year, over 2,000 tons of silver imported. China is preparing to put the yuan on a gold standard. Hong Kong is becoming the new physical gold hub. The West's paper markets, COMEX, LBMA, are dying. Socialism is destroying the West. The dollar is collapsing. Gold and silver are the only safe haven.
It's not just the bonds. It's particularly the yen exchange rate itself. I mean, the yen is lower than it's been for decades. 4 decades, I think I saw somewhere. And it really looks like it's not going to stop going down. I think people do understand. I'm talking about internationally. They do understand that Japan is very, very vulnerable to this crisis in the Persian Gulf because they import something like 90% of their energy. So energy costs are absolutely vital. Now, obviously, with the oil price having sunk from around about 100 down to 70-ish, huge sighs of relief and all the rest of it. But even so, the yen has still been going down, simply because of the losses, if you like, that you're likely to incur. I mean, the losses are sort of twofold. First of all, there's, I think the foreigners own around about 22 trillion in US equities. That bubble pops. What happens? The foreigners try and get out. So that's one aspect of it. I think the other aspect is that they look at the debt trap that the US government is in. And basically, the problem with the debt trap is that the higher the yield goes on bonds, so if you like the cost of financing, the worse the debt trap. And the thing that really fuels it is a declining economy, because that means that the tax base doesn't cover the interest rate, if you see what I mean. So that's the sort of equation that foreigners will be looking at. I mean, you know, the idea that higher bond yields are going to attract foreign investment in and all the rest of it, no, because the dollar is already over-owned by foreigners. They will sell in greater quantities, and currencies are credit. And if you want evidence of that, just look at the balance sheet of the issuing central bank. It's in there as a liability, which basically means it's an obligation. Now, the fact that they've all ratted on the obligation to deliver real money in return for their paper is neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is that it is credit, it is vulnerable, it will collapse. The Chinese are already seeing this, obviously, and is always the user of currencies who realize this last. And I'm just trying to wake people up to this so that they don't end up losing everything before they finally understand that it's not prices going up, but their currency collapsing. She's been beefing up. China has been beefing up through the SGE, the Hong Kong gold market facilities. Not just vaulting facilities and all the rest of it, trading facilities. And on top of that, put in links between Shenzhen so that all the re-refining stuff and the supplies and all the rest of it can be provided to Hong Kong. It's a direct link between Shenzhen on the mainland and Hong Kong. So she's building up a physically driven marketplace in Hong Kong for international players. Now, so that's the other thing. Now, the most recent thing, and this is an interesting one, the most recent thing is that they've changed the relationship whereby if you wanted to export gold, take gold with you, let us say, from China into Hong Kong, you would have to have the permission of the People's Bank and Customs. They're now talking about changing that so that the People's Bank don't have to give you permission to take your gold out of the country. It's merely a matter for customs. Now, this is obviously easing up, if you like, the sort of Hotel California bit of gold can go into China but never leave. This is now beginning to be changed. Now, this is very important because if you are going to have a major international gold center, probably the major international gold center based in Hong Kong, then obviously it does make sense that people on the mainland can take their gold, if you like, in limited quantities, freely across the borders. So they're freeing up the system, if you like, to provide more physical liquidity for the Hong Kong market. the thing that's fascinating about this is it is absolutely clear there is a huge difference between our paper markets, LBMA and COMEX, which are basically just paper. They are markets for bankers, basically, and investors who are content to hold paper rather than physical. On the one hand, compare that with China, where that market, both China and also Hong Kong, are physically deliverable, physically driven. So the paper aspect is going out of it. This is the new market. And the reason this is being promoted, I think, is that China recognizes that when the payment mechanism for the LBMA and COMEX disappears, which is what is happening to fiat currencies, particularly the dollar, then those markets will disappear as well. So they will have the market. It's a fascinating position. The other thing the reason this really matters is that China has accumulated huge quantities of gold. In the article which you referred to, I think I concluded that there's roughly could be something like between 30 and 40,000 tons actually held by the state. The people have also got another 28,000 tons, something like that. And also there's investment gold, which is in the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and so on and so forth. Further figure, I don't know, 5,000 tons, whatever it might be. So there are huge quantities of gold. Now, given that there are now SGE vaulting facilities in Hong Kong and also in Saudi Arabia, and there's talk of vaulting facilities being opened elsewhere, like Malaysia, for example, I don't know, possibly Indonesia. Sorry, I just shut the door. Wind's blowing it. There was even talk in Dubai. Obviously, that's maybe a sort of slightly difficult situation. And apparently, there was even talk of them opening a vault in Zurich. Now, the reason for this is, and basically, the way these vaults work is quite simple. Gold can go in or out only via payments in Chinese yuan. No other currency is acceptable. So it's quite easy for China to just turn around and say, right, the rate is now fixed. This is what it is. So many yuan per ounce or per gram, whatever they use. That's it. That is the fixed rate. They can just do that overnight. And they have got the strength, they've got the reserves, they've also got the economic basis to make it stick, which is something which America lost, which is why they went from owning, it's over 20,000 tons, I think, at the end of the Second World War, down to something like 9,000 tons when Bretton Woods was finally suspended in 1971. So China, I think, she can do that tomorrow. And but the problem is that she doesn't want to be blamed for undermining the fiat currency system, because the moment she does that, all the fiat currencies will be toast. Quite clearly, and China will be blamed for it. So what she's, I think, planning is to do it in such a way that it becomes obvious to everybody that the reason that she's put the yuan on the gold standard is to protect her currency from the crisis that is already enveloping the other G7 countries. It's not the other, but the G7 currencies from the dollar downwards. And I think that's what will give her the timing. But the fact that she's been moving recently to, say to her banks, don't hold US treasuries, the fact that she has been dumping dollars as rapidly as she possibly can, and the fact that she's been moving, if you like, to quite aggressively to beef up Hong Kong as an international gold center, replacing what obviously will be a complete failure in the paper markets in the West. I think this means that she's taking the view that this is something that's going to happen sooner than perhaps she originally thought.